Hi everyone, Christina Werner here with another video for SimonsStamp.com. Today I'm going to be showing you how I create center fade embossed backgrounds. I'm going to be using two different backgrounds from Simons Stamp today. This first one is Spring Flowers background, and I'm going to take out the foam pad in my MISTI stamp positioning tool. I'm going to put in some navy cardstock, and then I'm going to put my stamp in. So this cardstock is actually cut to 6.5 by 4.5. I'm going to be making a 5x7 card today, so I wanted a slightly oversized piece to work with. But the stamp is only 6x6, so I'm going to have to think about that as I do some of my stamping. I've prepped my cardstock with an anti-static powder tool, and now I'm applying Versamark ink to the outer edges of my stamp. And on the one side that's it's the left side showing here, but when I stamp it, it's going to be turned over and it'll be the right. I'm putting a little more ink on that edge. Now I'm grabbing a paper towel and I'm going to dab away that Versamark ink that's in the center area of my stamp. A little bit off to the side since I do have some cardstock that's not quite the same width. So I'm going to stamp down as best I can, walking my fingertips over that stamp. And I realized I needed a little more stamping on that one edge. So I'm adding some more Versamark ink, softening that ink with a paper towel, and then I will stamp down once again. And because my cardstock is in the corner of my MISTI, it's going to allow me to have a perfect impression right over the area that I've already stamped. So the idea behind this is we're trying to get the stamped background around the outer edges of our cardstock. We want to leave the center area blank. We don't want any stamping to go in the center area. The bulk of the fading will come into effect after we've applied the embossing powder, and I'll show you what I mean by that. Sprinkling on some gilded embossing powder from Burtis Monroe, and I'm applying it just to the outer edge. Now, because that stamp is sticky and it kind of leaves behind a residue, even though we didn't put Versamark ink on the very center of that image, it still leaves a little bit of a ghost on the cardstock and it makes the embossing powder stick. So I have the area in the center basically free of embossing powder, but I'm going to help that along to have a better fade by using a dry, clean paintbrush. I just start to brush away some of that embossing powder and kind of loosen it up. I'm going to tap off the excess quite a few times, trying to get off any of that embossing powder in the center. And I can use my brush to sweep that away. And I found that it was easiest to kind of sweep from the center and lift my brush as it goes out toward the outer edge. And that really cleans up a lot of that center area. Tapping that off again, and then I'm going to hit that with my heat tool until it's smooth and melted. There are going to be a little bit of ghosting areas of that stamped image where the Versamark ink does not have embossing powder on top of it, but on this dark cardstock it doesn't show too much, and on the final project you can hardly tell it's there. So I have that first one done. I'm going to go ahead and show you a second example. Putting my foam insert back into my MISTI tool, since this next stamp is a cling stamp, or not a cling stamp. This is the Sweet Garden background 4x6 stamp set. I'm using some pink cardstock this time, and I have the background that goes right on top. My cardstock is cut to 4x5, and I'm prepping that with an anti-static powder tool. This time I'm inking up the entire stamp. Since I realized the first time I did this, most of that brushing away happened with my dry paintbrush. Using a paper towel just to rub off some of that embossing ink, the Versamark ink, and then I stamped that down onto my cardstock. I'll peel that up. It's a really big stamp, so it sort of sticks. And I can see a little bit of a ghosting image around the outer edge. I'm now going to use rose gold embossing powder from Lawn Fawn. This is such a beautiful color combination, a pale pink cardstock with the rose gold on top. I think it looks awesome. So like I did before, I'm only applying the embossing powder to the outer edge. And this one performed even better, having already had a little bit of experience doing that first card. So I'm going around the outer edge, kind of adding a border. And this is going to give me that center fade look. where I'm going to put my greeting right in the center. Finishing that off by sprinkling that on. And then I didn't end up cleaning up any of the embossing powder on this one. I decided that it faded pretty well, so I hit it with my heat tool and it traveled around the outer edge, making sure to melt all of that embossing powder. I'm going to go ahead and stamp the greeting on the center of this card here. This is XL Greetings 2. I'm going to use the one that says sending lots of hugs. It's the perfect size to fit inside the center area. I used my anti-static powder tool once again, and then stamped down with some Versamark ink on that stamp. I'm sprinkling on more of that rose gold embossing powder, tapping it off so it falls into a coffee filter, and then after all of that's applied, I can hit that with my heat tool. I like to use a coffee filter to catch the powder on any of the colors of powder that I don't use that often. For white, I have it in a container, and gold I do as well. But for specialized colors like this, I just use a coffee filter to catch it. I trimmed down both of these backgrounds so that I'll have a nice white border on my card bases. I trimmed this one down quite a bit so it has a nice thick white border. And before I put the backgrounds on cards, I'm going to work on the greeting for the blue one. This is the You Are Simply the Best die set. And I'm only going to be using the words. I won't be using that outline, shadow, or halo. And I cut out 4 layers of that same dark blue cardstock. And then for the top layer, I temporarily adhered it to a piece of scratch paper. I just used some of that blue cardstock that was left over. And I put that down, took some of the stickiness with my fingertips so that I can peel this off later. I then turned over that greeting and pressed it into my Versamark ink pad. This is going to apply Versamark to every single bit of the surface area on that die cut. And then I'm going to apply the same gold embossing powder that I used for my background. Once again, this is gilded embossing powder from Burtis Monroe. So I'll just sprinkle that on, tap off the excess, and then hit that with my heat tool. And when I've done this in the past, and it stayed true this time, the die cut embossing areas melt first, and then you'll have to go back over it to get the areas that are on the big piece of cardstock. So that's one layer of embossing powder. I'm going to do a second layer so that I have a nice thick coat. So I'll press that into my Versamark ink pad again, apply the embossing powder, tap it off, and then heat set that. So I'm going to peel it off with some tweezers, being very, very gentle and careful as I peel up all of these words. And when you do, it's kind of left with a little bit of a jagged edge because it's, been melted next to the area around itself. So I like to hold it in some tweezers and then just put my heat tool over the entire area again, and that smooths out any rough edges. I then adhered all of these die cuts together. So I have 3 layers of the navy blue die cuts, and then the top layer will be the gold. So I like to use a liquid glue. This is Honeybee Precision Glue. And I just put dabs of glue on the back, little dots, and then adhere them together. And I use my fingertips to help line them all up perfectly. Put dots on the back of that stacked die cut and then directly onto my background piece. So to finish off these cards, I just created some white card bases. For the pink card, it is a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch card base. And I adhered my embossed piece using some foam tape. And I did the exact same thing for the other card as well. Isn't that embossing powder pretty? I like the gold shift. So I put some foam adhesive on the back of this one and then adhered it to a 5x7 card base. Both of these card bases are made out of some Neenah Classic Crest Solar White 110-pound cardstock. So those are my 2 cards for today, showing you how to create very simple center fade embossed backgrounds. I hope this gives you an idea of what you can do with more of your background stamps. You can really stretch them and get a different look. Thanks so much for watching today. You can get all of the supplies I used today over at simonsastamp.com. Thanks for watching.